I think that's one of the superpowers of ADHD as well, right? So ADHD in itself is a superpower, but change for people with ADHD is normal, is our normal, right? So we're used to starting many different projects. We're used to our mind jumping around. In my company, I've been there for 5 years, right? And I am now on my 8th role in 5 years.
Hello and welcome to Growing Through It, your go-to podcast for real leadership stories. I'm your host, Jen Arnold. In every episode, you'll hear straight talk from leaders who face their own challenges. We'll dive into those whoops moments and the insights that followed. This podcast is about the lessons that refine us, shared to help you confidently lead in your own style. Whether you're looking to steer your team towards success or just seeking a spark of inspiration, you're in the right place. Let's grow through it together. Karyn, welcome to the Growing Through It podcast. I'm so glad to have you on today.
Well, thank you for having me, Jen. I'm really looking forward to our conversation, and thank you for having me.
Me as well. Well, Karyn, you want to take a minute to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role?
So I am the employee experience lead for Citi Global Markets. I am the first employee experience lead on a trading floor at any financial institution in the front office in business, meaning that I'm sitting on the floors with people.
Wow. And I'm guessing it took a while to get there. How many years have you been in a leadership position?
I would say I've been a leader my entire life, but in a leadership position, I've probably been there about 3 years officially in a corporate setting. In a non-corporate setting, I've always been in a leadership position.
Got it. And we're going to talk about neurodivergence today. And do you mind just sharing what your specific diagnosis is so we'll talk about the umbrella, but I think it's important to talk about your diagnosis.
So I actually have ADHD, and I will tell everybody as they listen to this podcast, I may jump around a little bit, and I'm going to ask you to keep me on track, Jen, because anybody I work with, I ask them to bring me back to where I need to be. So really important. ADHD, I was diagnosed with it almost 25 years ago. So I've known for a long time that I've had ADHD. I was diagnosed. I wasn't self-diagnosed, so I do know I have that condition. But it's only now that I feel free to talk about it. Neurodivergence in general has just made it on the disability list, right? People didn't see it as a disability before. So now when you're filling out application forms for a job, you can check that you have a disability. But I don't see ADHD as a disability personally. It's my superpower.
I completely agree. We were talking about this. My son's got ADHD. It was diagnosed at the age of 5. So I think, fortunately, they're diagnosing people a little bit earlier now. But yeah, it makes a difference when you actually get diagnosed. But creative genius, like he has so many great qualities. So can you talk a little bit about some of maybe the qualities that ADHD brings? Because I think, we talked a little bit offline that people just flippantly use the word ADHD. Oh, I've got ADHD. And so I think in a lot of people's minds, it's just, a little jumpy around.
Or disorganized.
Disorganized, right. So can you talk through that a little bit?
I actually use organization tools to remain very organized. I'm disorganized in the way I process thoughts is what normal people would feel, but I feel normal. So I don't feel any different from anybody else. So to jump in before I answer that question, I'll tell you that growing up, there weren't a lot of leaders who were considered neurodivergent or had ADHD or talked about it, right? And the only person I knew of that talked about it and people were aware of him having some form of neurodivergence or he directly has ADD or ADHD is Richard Branson, right? And everybody loves Richard. He's the crazy guy who's jumping out of planes. And he's also the guy who has Virgin Records and Virgin Airlines and Virgin Cruise Line and is now in space, right? What else, right?
He has hotels. He's a hotel here in Vegas.
Yeah. And so his business represents his brain, right? So he's very diversified all over the place. So as someone who knew I had ADHD, I felt like I needed to hide it growing up. And when I went into corporate, it's not until now, as I said, I feel comfortable sharing that I did. So did that answer your question?
Yeah. And you said, because I think it's too, people understanding that for you going into a leadership role, you had unique challenges, right?
Yeah.
I think in the corporate world, it's almost like we were talking about in the school world, right? We have connotations with what a leader should be or what a good kid should be. But what were some unique challenges that you have,
right,
especially when it comes to a leadership role?
And I like that you said that I have. It doesn't go away. It doesn't change, right? We can try, but we can't change it. And if I may share a story, I once was told by a boss, Karyn, you need to say it with flowers. And I was like, what does say it with flowers mean? Like, what does that mean? He goes, well, you're very direct. You have to find a way to be softer. And so that was, and still is, one of my biggest challenges. And so as I was sharing with you earlier, I find it necessary when I'm having a one-on-one conversation and meeting somebody for the first time to reach out to them, or actually, if I'm meeting with them one-on-one, to have a conversation with them directly and start it with vulnerability and say, listen, I have ADHD, I'm neurodivergent, and sometimes I come across as a bit strong or direct. But we all want the best for each other and the best for the job and the best for the project that I'm working on or the program I'm launching. And so know that it comes from a good place. But I don't always get that chance, Jen. So, for example, my first call might include 20 people on a line, right? We're on a Zoom call, or I'm in a setting with 20 new individuals that I'm meeting for the first time. And if they don't know me, it does come across a bit strong. So that's why I was told, say things with flowers, which again, when you have a heart of good intentions, when somebody says that to you, you're like, what does that mean? Like, I don't mean to come across, strong.
Right. And what do you do in those situations when you are in a room with 20 people and you can't say, excuse me, real quick, let me tell you, as you can in a one-on-one situation? How do you manage that?
So it's a little bit difficult. Now I have started saving my opinions, the stronger ones, what I think is strong, for later on, right? To make sure I have that one-on-one, or saying, hey, I really need to take this offline with you later. Let's have that discussion later. I actually have to stop myself from jumping in and interrupting. So I've started being the queen of the mute button. I put myself on mute. I'll keep myself on mute. In my head, I'm constantly reminding myself, don't take myself off mute. And if I'm off mute because somebody's asked me a question, I end up actually, covering my mouth like this a little bit as a physical reminder that I can't jump in and interrupt people.
You still get your ideas out though, right? So you just save them for a different time. So it's not like you were,
I would not be in the role that I am in now if I didn't have ideas that were shared to make a difference in a corporate setting, in the environment.
Okay. Just want to clarify that. I figured that was the case.
Yes. And I don't do well in, in meetings and stuff. People say I don't say goodbye, that I will just leave. And it's because I don't know. I feel a little bit uncomfortable with that social situation. So I try to sneak out a couple minutes early. I say I have another meeting, so I don't have to go through the whole goodbyes to everybody. And I feel uncomfortable with that. So people always, if they know me, they know I'll leave a little bit sooner than everybody else. People who don't know me, they just assume I have something else going on and I've had to leave for that.
So has it created challenges with colleagues or peers? You've already gotten the feedback, you said, to say it with flowers. So you've gotten some feedback around your maybe directness.
Yes.
Has it created challenges with peers as well who don't know you as well and they think maybe you're just being rude? Everyone can assume things, right? They'll fill in their own story if you leave a meeting early.
If you leave, yes. And they have. And, and usually that gets back to me, especially in the role that I'm in. And I try to set up that one-on-one follow-up conversation. And I start the conversation by apologizing for how I made them feel, and that it was not an intentional directness, and explain to them kind of the scenario that I'm in. But what I've found, Jen, as we've started as organizations introducing more training around dealing with neurodivergence in general, that it is making a difference already. And I'm so glad they put it on the disability list, because, when you have a mind of a different kind, it's a challenge that, people don't feel like, you're the norm. So,
right.
Yes.
Do you ever get frustrated that you can't just, that you have... What's that? What'd you say?
T-shirt that says it? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. There you go. There's that interruption, right? There you go. It just came out. No. Sorry about that.
No, please interrupt. But do you ever get frustrated? Just like, I just need to say what I need to say. Why? I mean, because I think that's a lot of exhaustion in corporate America, right? You have to put this filter on. Most of us do.
Yeah.
But does it ever get exhausting? You're like, I just want to go to town. I've got this great idea. Like, I just need to say what I need to say.
Exactly. And you sometimes you don't want to feel like you have to be politically correct. But yeah, and I do interrupt. Like, I just feel the need to say what you want to say. But you know what? I love Zoom calls, Jen, because you can raise your hand, right? Mm-hmm. And then whoever it is sees your raised hand and says, hey, Karyn, do you have something to share? And so I can jump in then and use tools. The virtual world has been much better to me than the physical world. So
because of that, because you can mute, you said you could mute yourself,
right?
And that you can raise your hand so you're going to get called on. Anything else? That's interesting.
When you get excited or you have to show your passionate approach, you can put on the celebration, how they have the little celebrate sign with the streamers. So you can put that on. But yeah, it has been much, much kinder to people who are, and more inclusive, right? People, if you're on Zoom, you feel a little bit more comfortable in your space than the physical world. So when people do this whole, we're better together, I'm like, not everyone's better together, right? Nope. Some people are better on Zoom than they are together physically.
Well, I'm glad you're bringing that up, Karyn, because there is such that push back to returning to the office. And I think that is an interesting factor I've never thought about before. So I'm really glad that you raised that up. I love the virtual world myself. So,
and I didn't do well when I'm in the office, or don't do well, or didn't in the past when there were, what they call water cooler conversations, right? Mm-hmm. I would struggle with, what do I say? Am I saying something that's inappropriate, right? And had to be in my head a lot more than I have to be in my head versus on a virtual call.
Yeah. That's exhausting. So I'm glad that you've got a little reprieve from that.
Yeah.
So one of the things we talked about before we actually decided to do this podcast was that presenting was difficult for you. And that was one of the things that in your leadership role that you were required to do. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
So I'm comfortable meeting people and having a less formal type of meeting than I am when I have to stand up in front of senior leadership. Because I get very, very nervous. I jump around a lot. And then when I get nervous, I tend to read my slides, right? So because I want to make sure I stay on track. I'm so conscious that I need to stay on track. I need to get my message around. When I present on Zoom, I also fly around a lot. But I like it more because I can move my slides a lot around in Zoom. But in person, I can't really do that. So I have to follow format, and I struggle. And then my mind has already gone, oops, maybe I should show you the last slide. And then I'm clicking through and it looks like I'm disorganized. But I do spend a lot of time now having people review my presentations and using visual aids. So the world has changed, Jen, in the sense that we no longer put a lot of bullet points in presentations. We tend to use a lot more visuals now. And so I talk to the visual. So I'm actually practicing. I had to take a Toastmasters class to get better at it, but I use the visuals as prompts. And then because people don't always know what the visual means, I could like fill in my own message for the visual. so am I getting better? Yes. And I'm not that person who likes to put things on PowerPoint. So in my world, when you're presenting to seniors, you put a lot of stuff on PowerPoint. I've gotten to a point where if I have to show my work, I like to do a demo. Right. So, and I bring my team a lot to the table, Jen. A lot of people tend to, here, I'm the leader of the team. I'm going to do the presentation. That's not how it works in my world. I leverage the strengths of my teams, so of my teammates or the people who work with me, and bring them forward and say, okay, you're going to present this part and you're going to present that part. And so my job is really to wrap a ribbon around the message now, which is something I've worked on over the past few months to get better at presenting.
Yeah.
But
well, I love that. What's that?
But I get really nervous still. Super nervous.
Well, you're not alone. I think a lot of people do get nervous talking to senior leaders. That's one, but definitely with the factor of ADHD, when you're, kind of trying to organize everything, but you have all these ideas, that must make it extra tough. But I think you gave everyone a really good presentation trick, is just to use visuals. You can change the story behind it later, right?
Yes, you could. You could change the story behind the visual, right?
Right. Just get 5 good visuals. Tell a story.
That's why I like icons, I love icons because it tells a story. And then I love those whiteboard videos. I like to introduce videos into my presentations as well. So I'm not the only talking head up there, and bring people to the table. So I'm not that person presenting everything.
Yes, I love that you said that, because I do want to shift to how do you lead your team, right? So one thing you just said is you fill in to where maybe some of your team members are strong and you can bring them in certain aspects of the presentation, bringing them in. That's a wonderful leadership trait that you already have. But what are some, how do you manage the team? Like, are there any, challenges there?
So they all know that my challenges, right? And I tend to hire people who are organized in different ways, right? So everybody's very diverse. So some people, their strengths are using tools. So we have an employee experience app, and so they own the app that we work in, right? And some people, their strength is talking to senior leaders and presenting, right? And so I hire people of diverse strengths. I can pretty much know in the interview process what their strengths would be. So the team is very, very, very diverse. And the other thing is nobody works for me. Everybody works with me, right? I never use, or I try not to use, the word working for me. And so we are all part of the team. I'm not a hierarchical leader. I'm really one of those sort of social leader. They haven't branded it properly yet. There's a meaning for it. Maybe that's something I work on as a project. How do you brand, that social leader? But I bring everybody to the table. So whether you're a millennial just starting off with me, or you're older than I am and have been in the corporate setting for a long time and still are working, in my organization, you're all working with me. So some people say, that I bring people along on my journey, and I really like doing that because it helps them develop skills of dealing with everybody. I do it outside of work as well. So outside of the corporate setting. So I teach at a local college. I teach undergraduates mass communications, multicultural communications, and believe it or not, even though I feel uncomfortable presenting, I teach introduction to speech. And so my classes are really, really interesting, and everybody leaves the class saying, Dr. Karyn, you taught me so much about my life and working with individuals of all types, not just different cultures, just every individual, that I feel like I'm, going to be incredible in life.
And how many people do you lead currently?
I lead a small team currently. We're set up in working groups, so it's not like they direct report into me. And my organization is going through a reorganization right now. So we are doing some changes in how we manage people. So I don't have a perfect answer for you right now.
Sure.
So
No, that's okay. There's no perfect answers out there.
Some teams that I lead could be over 150 people, and some teams that I lead could be, 10, 15 people. So it really depends on how we're running which program at the time and how we're working together to deliver value to the firm.
And organizations constantly change. I mean, all the time, no matter what organization you work in. How do you handle change? Like, do you kind of, all right, embrace it? Or are you a little bit hesitant or somewhere in between?
I think that's one of the superpowers of ADHD as well, right? So ADHD in itself is a superpower, but change for people with ADHD is normal. It's our normal, right? So we're used to starting many different projects. We're used to our mind jumping around. In my company, I've been there for 5 years, right? And I am now on my 8th role in 5 years, right?
Oh, wow.
Yes. So not 8 formal roles. I've had 4 formal roles, but I've done stretch assignments and all kinds of stuff to keep my mind just growing and learning. And it has really set me up to be where I am today. So how do I remind me of the question? Because I've lost it. This is an ADHD.
No, that's okay. How do you approach change? What is your
I embrace it. I love it. It makes life interesting for me, right? So if a job becomes too monotonous, we can't do it. And you will find in somebody who has ADHD is that they tend to jump around a lot. So people look at your resume and they're like, but you were a consultant here and you were this there and you're a real estate broker and you have this and you have that. Maybe I wouldn't hire you because you're not stable, but that's the person you want to hire because they not only embrace change, they change the environment, they change the people, they leave a lasting impact, and they go with the flow. It's just part of their life. It's normal for them.
Yeah, and I'm hoping nowadays people are a little less worried about jumping around because I think it's become the norm. But that is the beauty of working in a larger organization where you can take on stretch assignments and do different things.
So my organization, as you mentioned earlier, we are a 10,000 plus or minus person organization in a 250,000 person firm. And in that firm, I have worked in 4 different areas already. So 4 formal jobs, 4 informal jobs.
Yeah. Well, any other superpowers you want to mention? Because I think it's important too. We talked about some of the challenges that you've had to overcome, but there's also these superpowers that we need to say, this is a good person to hire because look at all they can do.
Well, who said that people who were neurotypical were normal? And who said that people were neurodivergent were abnormal, right? Maybe we're the normal and you're the abnormal, right? Like, maybe we're hunter-gatherers, right? And we're out there. We all have our side hustles. You'll always find somebody in an ADHD world with a side hustle. We got something going on the side, right? Because it keeps us interesting and very, very diverse. But to answer the question, I'm thinking of the question. So it definitely is the ability to have what they call a portfolio career in a corporate setting. So you have your day job, and then I teach, and I also have a real estate license, and I have rental properties, and these are all the things that somebody would look at me and go, wow, that's a lot. And me, I go, no, that's just normal. It's just my life, right? It's just my life. So that would also be something that's, I would say, a superpower, the ability to be an interesting person that's not like your life is never boring. We never get bored.
Yeah. Yeah, the teachers at school love my son, despite his behavior problems that go on. Like, people love him because he's got this just interesting personality. He says things and you're just like, that's a really cool thing to say, right? Like, just creativity, I don't know. He's just a cool kid. So I think there's that piece of the personality.
And what's his name, Jen?
Ben.
So Ben, oh, I love Ben, as that would be the third Ben I've talked to probably this week or know about this week. But what do you love about Ben?
What do I love?
Yeah, about his ADHD. You talk about what the teacher loves, but what do you love?
One of the things that I was just saying this to my husband is, like, I love that he can just manage himself. So we have 2 kids, but he'll ask for what he wants. He is not quiet. He's not shy. He'll be like, I can drop him off and he'll go figure it out. Like, it's just like this, like, even when he was younger, he would like go get the grocery store man to help my mom, like, get something. Like, he was just very, like, he's kind of got this command about him. And he's funny. He's really funny. Oh,
I love that.
He's creative. I don't know. He's a great kid.
Good. And it's so important to have parents who are supportive of children who can just jump in and figure things out and get stuff done. Now, I talked a lot about my superpowers, but I talked a little bit about my challenges of directness. But one major challenge we have is we can start a lot of things, but we don't always finish them, right? And so people tend to say we procrastinate. But it's not procrastination. Either we lose interest, right? We forget where we're supposed to be, right? Or it's not procrastination. Or we do our best work at the last minute.
Oh my God, Karyn, you were like, I tell this to Ben all the time. I'm like, Ben, can you go do this? He's like, yeah, give me a few minutes. And I'm like, cool, I'll come back. And I say, Ben, can you do this? Yeah, give me a few minutes. And I'm like, I have given you too many damn minutes. Can we get to it? But we talk about this all the time. It's like, let's not procrastinate it. But you just opened it up for me a little bit.
Yeah, it's not procrastination. It's just we work best under pressure because then we are forced to focus, right?
Hey,
like your insides are telling you really need to get this done. Otherwise, you're going to fail. And we don't like failing.
No, he definitely doesn't. Well, what do you do to overcome that? Do you just do it at the last minute and it just gets done and it's great? Or do you have strategies in place?
You know that book called Eat Your Frog or Eat That Frog First?
Yeah.
Yes. I can't remember the name of it. I actually did a course on that book. And when I did, it really woke me up to like doing the difficult things. And also that nothing's ever perfect. Perfect is something that you create for your in your own mind, right? And so I just do the best that I could, and I put something down and I leave it. Now, I have somebody who works for me directly. I'll say to her, what do I need to do today? And she will like read out what I need to do. And then she remembers, she uses checklists and says, you forgot to do this. And so we have teams at work. And so she sets out all my tasks on teams. They all have direction. And I use that as a tool to make sure I stay on track. But do I leave things till the last minute? Yeah, I work well under pressure, is what I say. Do I procrastinate? Yeah. Not always. No. Do I always finish my projects? No, I don't.
That's not too unlike me. I mean, I leave things to the last minute because I like the deadline. But yeah, it is. I have to force myself to do things. And I'm neurotypical. So I think it's a thread among some of us, definitely.
Right. That's funny. Somebody made a T-shirt the other day. I was having a conversation with him. Miss Peter B. Williams. He wrote the book Productive Accidents, and he made a T-shirt that said neurotypical but a bit off the wall. So are you saying that you're neurotypical but a bit off the wall?
Maybe. Maybe I'm just a procrastinator myself. That's where Ben gets it from. So Karyn, where do you find support? Because it's, you can be, maybe, perhaps, you correct me if I'm wrong, feel like you're going at it alone. I think that's a typical feeling of a leader, feeling like you're going at it alone, but then you've gotten the neurodivergence on top of that. So how do you get support? And you already just named how you leverage some members of your team, which is brilliant. But what are other forms of support?
I know when my neurodivergence is very bad that I need to take a walk, right? Like I need to get some physical exercise in to help me, overcome the feelings that I'm feeling. I have a great support network of friends, right? So one thing about neurodivergence in general is that you can go 0 to 60 really fast, right? So like, your mood sometimes swings really fast. And I have a phone a friend. So I have friends that I reach out to and I literally say to that friend, I have just like lost it. And she will say, she'll like talk me off the shelf. And it's kind of a joke. I'm like, can you talk me off the shelf, please? Because I'm about to quit my job. Because we all go through those moments, right? But somebody who's neurotypical may say, okay, I'm about to quit my job. Well, they might start looking for another job. They might actually, but somebody neurodivergent might say, that's it. I quit. Send the message on LinkedIn. Like they next level it, right? So they're like, guess what? Your boss reads it. And your boss is like, and have I had those moments at work? Yeah, where I type out, I think I can't do this anymore. And, here's my notice. And then I hit delete, and I call my friend to make sure I don't do it. Right?
Check.
Yeah. Check.
It's good to have friends like that.
It's good. I'll tell you a little thing about Zoom calls. So sometimes I'm sharing my screen, but I'm seeing the Teams light flashing on the bottom of the screen, meaning somebody's messaging me while I'm sharing my screen. And recently I've been on a Zoom call where I switched over my Teams and I sent a message where sharing the screen and the person saw that I was like not paying attention and I switched over, and so I have learned how do I deal with that is like I literally learned on the Zoom setting that you could share only a portion of your screen. Yes. I use tools to benefit. And I also constantly tell myself in my head, I'm saying, pay attention, stay on track. So that's another emotional tool that I use. So.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing those. And Karyn, how does having ADHD make you a stronger or better leader?
Because I have to be vulnerable with people, Jen, I think I'm more empathetic to their challenges, right? I have people who, there's things that happen in their days that they can't control. And I try to be much more understanding than most people would be. Yeah. Right? Most neurotypical people would be, right? It's the only deadlines you have in life are, somebody's dying or, you are sick. Those are the only deadlines that are major deadlines that you can't change. The others, you just have to accept and find a way to explain it away. So I think that's what I do as a leader. That's different than a lot of managers. I don't create false deadlines for people.
That's always good. And I think too, a lot of people are seeking that vulnerability. So the fact that you are saying, hey, here's what I've got, here's how we're going to work together in opening up those conversations, I don't think it happens enough in leadership. So I love that you do that.
Thank you. I definitely want to be a better person, a better human. And by taking that view, it makes such a huge difference to the people that work with me.
Yes, I imagine. So if you had to give advice for a leader who's also neurotypical, what advice would you give them? Maybe if they're earlier in their career, or even perhaps as someone who is, I'm layering onto this question, so feel free to answer two different ways. If it is somebody who is an individual contributor and is neurodivergent, thinking I could never lead because of what, this diagnosis, what is your advice to them as they navigate the world of leadership, kind of getting into it?
And I started off in the corporate setting as an individual contributor late into my career, right? Because people thought I could not lead, right? And it's what would I tell people just starting off? Don't hide or be ashamed of who you are. Be proud of who you are, right? As I said, it's not a disability. It's a superpower, right? And change that negative message into what people consider negative into positive. Find a way to be vulnerable and share exactly who you are with them. And you can always learn from other people. Doesn't mean that you can change. It just means that you have a better understanding of what people expect of you.
Yeah.
Right. And, when my boss said, say things with flowers, I sent him to the neurodivergent training at work. I said, listen, you really need to take this. Otherwise, we will not work well together. And he trusts me with developing a ton of things now because he knows my mind is very different. So if you're younger and you feel like you have to fit in, just be yourself. You don't need to fit into somebody else's expectations of you.
Yeah. Karyn, I love that you said that. So he went to training there to learn about
I sent him to training. I said, listen, we're going to fail if you and I don't figure out a way for you to understand me. I think I understand you, but I don't think you understand me. So, and he went. Me. Yeah, he went. He had no choice because I was like, well, so because I lead the program, I was like, you know what? I will definitely find the person to assign this training to you because you need to do it because it won't work. And then I'm in a situation where I have two bosses, right? They're quite senior in the organization. And the second boss, he has this saying, it's called don't swim in treacle. So he's obviously from the UK. I had to look up what treacle was and figure out how to spell it because I'd never heard it before. And when something comes up, I hear him in my head saying, don't swim in treacle, Karyn, don't swim in treacle. But what he does for me is he helps me use a tracker. And so he constantly says, is it on the tracker? If it's not on the tracker, it's not real. If it's not on the tracker, it's not real. It really pushed me to start using that, right? And even though it's a challenge, my directs actually keep the tracker up to date for me, but I know if it's not on the tracker, it's not real, it's treacle, and I'm not going there.
Yeah.
So,
I love it.
Yeah. I have two different bosses. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that makes things a little more complicated, but it sounds like you have great working relationships with both of them and the differences.
Thankfully, the one who said, say it with flowers is very busy. So he doesn't stay on me as much as the one who says, don't swim in treacle. So,
well, did he at least stop saying, say it with flowers? Did that stop at all?
Yes. Yeah. He knows now that I'm very direct. And at the end of the day, Jen, we're all employees in a corporate setting, right? Even the CEO is an employee, right? Yeah. So we're all equals, all wanting the same thing. Just somebody's salary is more than somebody else's, right? We want the company to succeed.
Right. And we were talking about that before we started recording. If we could just approach the interactions with, hey, we're all doing our best. We all want the best for the organization and each other. That would go a long way, regardless of neurotypical, neurodivergent. But I love that you've shined a light on some of the things that are superpowers, as well as some challenges, especially in the leadership realm that we just don't talk about that much. So I'm glad that you brought this topic to us today.
No, we don't talk about it. And I like that you recognize that it was important to talk about. So thank you for having me and inviting me, right? As I said, I've never done a podcast about my neurodivergence before. So it's really nice to be able to share the message and hopefully change somebody's lives. And you and I, when we were talking previously, somebody, you had said in a school situation, your son was told to just be good and still, or still and good, right? To always remember, people are always good. They're just not still, right? They're always good, no matter what. So
yes, it's a good thing to remember. And Karyn, before we close out, is there anything else you want to leave the listeners with that maybe you haven't said or I haven't asked?
I think I've said a lot. I will probably think about something later on because we're very good at doing that as well,
Yes. Oh.
right? Yes. I think a lot of people are, but I think I've covered enough. And I just want you to know that if anybody feels like they need support in this space and wants to talk about it more, I'm happy to be a resource for people.
Wonderful. And I will share your LinkedIn profile, your link, so people can connect with you there, which is where we connected. And so it was lovely. Just from the post that you wrote, I reached out and said, hey, do you want to tell that story? So LinkedIn can bring some good stuff and bring some real, true connections together. So Karyn, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. And I actually recently met somebody else who's in the same scenario as me in a corporate setting, and her title is Chief Purpose Officer. And I really like that. And her purpose is to help educate people on neurodivergence. So in the corporate setting. So I like that there's actually roles being created around, some of these challenges.
I do too. And hopefully it'll continue.
For sure.
Thanks for your time, Karyn. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on Growing Through It. I'm Jen Arnold, and it's been a pleasure sharing this time with you. If today's story sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to our podcast, leave a review, and share it with your fellow leaders. And remember, each episode comes with a nugget of wisdom that we expand on in our newsletter. So if you're eager to put these insights into action, head over to our website at growthsignals.co and sign up for exclusive content that'll give you an edge in your leadership journey. Keep growing, and I'll connect with you again soon in our next episode. Until then, take the lessons learned and lead authentically.